shadows on the job, chilling workplace stories. Viewer discretion is advised. The following story contains intense horror, unsettling themes, and graphic descriptions that may disturb sensitive audiences. If you're watching this late at night or alone in a quiet office, maybe think twice. In the fluorescent glow of the office, where deadlines loom and coffee grows cold, something watches from the shadows. And it's not here for your overtime. The 7th floor of Crescent Towers loomed over Karachi's bustling business district, its glass facade reflecting the city's neon heartbeat. Inside, the office of Zenith Solutions was a sterile grid of cubicles, bathed in the cold glow of fluorescent lights. It was 11:43 p.m. on a humid July night in 2025, and the air conditioning hissed like a distant whisper. Most employees had long since fled to their homes, but 5 stragglers remained, chained to their desks by a looming client deadline. Aisha, the team lead, sat hunched over her laptop, her eyes burning from hours of staring at spreadsheets. Her hijab was slightly askew, a casualty of the long night, and a coffee mugum, blazoned with Boss Lady, in faded letters, sat cold beside her. Bass, ye presentation, Kotam Karo, Fergar, she muttered to herself, rubbing her temples. The client, a Dubai-based tech giant, wanted their pitch by 8 a.m., and Aisha's reputation was on the line. She glanced at her team, scattered across the open plan office. Bilal, the graphic designer, was sketching furiously on his tablet, muttering about client key nakher under his breath. His desk was chaos of energy drink cans and crumpled post-it notes. Sana, the junior coder, sat cross-legged in her chair, her headphones blasting Qawwali music to keep her awake as she debugged code. Omar, the intern, was fighting a losing battle with sleep, his head bobbing over a stack of printed reports. Zain, the IT guy, was absent, having vanished into the server room to wrestle with a faulty router. Guys, let's wrap this up by 1 a.m. Aisha called, her voice cutting through the hum of the office. The client's breathing down my neck, and I'm not losing this account. Breathing down your neck. Bilal smirked, not looking up from his tablet. Feels like this office is doing that. You ever notice how creepy this place gets at night? Like unnaturally creepy. Sana pulled off one headphone, her brow furrowed. Hon, Bilal, or Tum horror movie start Matt Caro. Last week you said the photocopier was haunted. It is haunted. Bilal shot back, pointing his stylus at her. It jams every time I'm alone with it. Like it's personal. Omar snorted, waking up just enough to join in. Maybe it's just tired of your ugly designs, bro. The group laughed, the sound brittle in the empty office, but the levity faded fast, swallowed by the oppressive silence that seemed to cling to the walls. Aisha frowned. Glancing at the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city skyline sparkled beyond, but the reflection in the glass felt wrong. Was that a shadow moving behind her own reflection, or just her tired eyes playing tricks? Zain, you done with that router yet? She called toward the server room, her voice echoing down the darkened hallway. No answer. Zain, she stood, her chair creaking loudly in the quiet. The others looked up, sensing the shift in her tone. Bilal set down his tablet, his smirk gone. I'll check on him. Probably fell asleep on the server rack again. Guy's got a weird thing for cables. Be quick, Aisha said, unease curling in her stomach. She watched Bilal disappear down the hall, his footsteps muffled by the carpet. The office felt too big, too empty, the shadows in the corners too deep. Sana adjusted her headphones, her fingers tapping. Nervously, Aisha, you okay? You look like you've seen a boot. Aisha forced a smile, just tired. This place gets to you after midnight. Omar yawned, stretching. Tell me about it. Why'd we take this job again? Oh, right, bills. Before Aisha could respond, her phone buzzed on the desk. A text from an unknown number. Don't look behind you. Her breath caught. She stared at the screen, her thumb hovering over the reply button. Very funny, Bilal, she muttered, assuming it was a prank. But the unease grew heavier, like a weight on her chest. She glanced at the window again, and this time she was sure. Something moved in the reflection, a dark shape that wasn't hers. "Guys, did you see?" she started, but a scream cut her off. Bill's voice, raw and terrified, echoed from the server room. "Bill!" Aisha shouted, bolting toward the hallway. Sana and Omar scrambled after her, Sana yanking off her headphones, Omar tripping over a chair and cursing under his breath. The office seemed to stretch, the hallway longer than it should be, the fluorescent lights flickering like a dying pulse. They reached the server room, its door ajar, spilling a faint blue glow into the hall. A wet, gurgling sound came from inside, like someone choking on water. Aisha's heart pounded as she pushed the door open, the others crowding behind her. The server room was a maze of blinking monitors and tangled cables, the air thick with the smell of ozone and something metallic. Bill stood in the center, his face pale as death, pointing at the floor. Yay kaya high, he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. Zane lay sprawled on the ground, his throat slashed open, blood pooling around him like spilled ink. But it wasn't just blood, it moved, crawling up the walls in thin, black tendrils, forming jagged, unreadable symbols that pulsed. Faintly, his eyes were wide open, staring blankly at the ceiling, his mouth frozen in a silent scream. Sana gasped, clutching Aisha's arm. "Allah Riham, is he? He's dead." Omar whispered, backing away. "He's dead, and we're stuck here with whatever did that." Aisha's mind reeled, her team lead instincts warring with panic. "Stay calm," she said, her voice shaking. "We need to call the police." Now, she fumbled for her phone, but the screen flickered, then displayed a single message in red. "You're next." The words pulsed, and the same message appeared on every monitor in the room, glowing like a warning. "What the hell?" Bill said, his voice rising. "Aisha, ye koi virus no hi. This is something else." Sana stepped closer to a monitor, her coder's curiosity overriding her fear. "It's not code," she murmured, her eyes scanning the symbols. "It's like, it's alive." The lights flickered, plunging the room into brief darkness. A low, guttural laugh echoed, not from any speaker, but from the walls themselves, vibrating through the floor. The temperature dropped sharply, their breaths fogging in the air. The shadows on the walls stretched, twisting into shapes that didn't match their bodies, long, clawed, and wrong. Omar's voice broke. "Ye koi mazak na hi. We need to get out." He lunged for the door, yanking the handle, but it wouldn't budge. "It's locked," he shouted, pounding on the metal. "We're trapped. Stop it, Omar." Aisha snapped, grabbing his arm. "Panicking won't help. We need to think." "Think," Bill said, his eyes wide as he stared at Zane's body. "Aisha, our friend is dead, and the walls are bleeding." "What's there to think about?" Sana knelt by Zane, her hands trembling as she checked his pulse, though it was clear he was gone. "This blood, it's not normal. Look at it." She pointed to the tendrils, which were now crawling higher, forming a circle of symbols around the room. "It's like it's writing something." Aisha's phone buzzed again. Another text, "Sign the contract." She showed it to the others, her hands shaking. "What contract? What's it talking about?" Before anyone could answer, the shadows moved. They peeled off the walls, coalescing into a vague, humanoid shape in the corner of the room. It had no face, just a void where features should be, but its presence was suffocating, like a weight pressing on their chests. Gurgling sound grew louder, and Zane's body twitched, his fingers curling unnaturally. "You work for us now," the shadow hissed, its voice a chorus of whispers, scraping their eardrums. "Sign. Or join him." Omar screamed, scrambling backward and knocking over a server rack. Sparks flew, and the monitors flickered, the red message pulsing faster. Sana grabbed Aisha's arm, her nails digging in. "Aisha, ye shaitani high. We can't stay here." Bilal stepped forward, his voice trembling but defiant. "Who are you? What do you want?" The shadow tilted its head as if amused. Zenith Solutions, your ambition, your fear. It feeds us. Aisha's mind raced. Zenith Solutions was just a tech company, wasn't it? A startup that promised growth, bonuses, and a shot at the big leagues. But the shadow's words, the blood, the locked door, it was all wrong. We're not signing anything, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. Let us go. The shadow laughed, the sound shaking the room. The door rattled but stayed shut. Zane's body twitched again, his head snapping toward them, his lifeless eyes locking onto Aisha's. You cannot leave, he said, his voice not his own, but the shadow's. Sana screamed, dropping her headphones. The koali music had turned to static, and through it, faint words. Work for us. Aisha backed away, her heart pounding. The symbols on the walls glowed brighter, and the shadow grew larger, its edges bleeding into the room. We need to find a way out, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Now. But the door remained locked, and the shadow's laughter grew louder, echoing in their skulls. They were trapped, and whatever was in the office with them wasn't human. The server room was a tomb of blinking lights and cold air. The hum of machines now a sinister pulse. Aisha, Bilal, Sana, and Omar stood frozen, staring at Zane's body, or what was left of it. The blood pooling around him wasn't just blood anymore. It writhed, black and viscous, crawling up the walls like veins, etching jagged, unreadable symbols that pulsed with a faint glow. The monitors flickered, each screen screaming in red, "You're next." The door had slammed shut, locking the inside. The air grew colder, their breaths fogging in the dim light. The guttural laugh from the walls lingered, sinking into their bones. Aisha, ye kaya high. Sana whispered, her voice trembling as she clutched her headphones like a lifeline. Her koali music had stopped, replaced by static, crackling through the earbuds. I don't know, Aisha admitted, her eyes darting between Zane's body and the shadows stretching across the walls. They didn't match their movements. Too long, too sharp, too alive. We need to get out. Now. Omar, pale and shaking, backed against a server rack. Ye mazak no hi, Zane's dead and that thing is here. His voice cracked, his intern bravado gone. He fumbled with his phone, but the screen was black, dead despite a full battery. Bilal, still staring at the symbols on the wall, muttered, "This isn't right. Blood doesn't move like that. It's writing something. Don't look at it." Aisha snapped, grabbing his arm. "We need to focus. The dork, and we break it." Bilal shook his head, his usual sarcasm replaced by dread. "It's reinforced. Fire, safety crap. We're trapped unless Zane's got a key in his." He trailed off, glancing at Zane's body, then quickly away. Sana stepped forward, her coder's instinct kicking in. The server rack. Maybe there's a control panel, something to unlock the door. She knelt by a terminal, her fingers shaking as she typed. The screen flickered, but instead of a login prompt, the same red message appeared. "You're next." Damn it. Sana slammed the keyboard, then froze. The static in her headphones grew louder, forming words. "Work. For us?" She ripped them off, throwing them to the floor. "Ye kaya bol raha hai. It's in my music." Aisha's phone buzzed again. Another text from an unknown number. "Sign the contract." Her heart pounded as she showed the screen to the others. "What contract? What's it talking about?" Before anyone could answer, the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into near darkness. The shadows on the walls moved, coalescing into a vague, humanoid shape near Zane's body. It had no face, just a void where features should be, but its presence pressed against their minds, heavy and suffocating. "You work for us now." The shadow hissed, its voice a chorus of whispers, like a dozen voices speaking at once. "Sign, or join him." Omar screamed, scrambling backward and knocking over a stack of cables. "Nahai, main Nahai car roha." "Get me out." "Shut up, Omar," Bilal hissed, grabbing his shoulder. "You're making it worse." Aisha stepped forward, her fear battling her resolve. "Who are you? What do you want?" The shadow tilted its head as if amused. Zenith Solutions. Your ambition, your fear, it feeds us. Sign the contract and live. Contract. Sana whispered, her eyes scanning the room. There's nothing here. No paper, no. A loud thunk interrupted her. A drawer in the server room's desk, previously locked, slid open on its own. Inside was a single file, its edges yellowed and stained with something dark. Aisha hesitated, then reached for it, her fingers brushing the rough paper. It felt wrong, like touching something alive. Don't, Bilal warned, his voice low. Aisha, ye kuch by ho sak, tahai. We don't have a choice, she shot back, opening the file. Inside was a single page, written in what looked like dried blood. The text a mix of English and symbols that hurt to look at. At the bottom were 5 blank spaces for signatures, and above them, a clause. In exchange for success, you pledge your soul to the service of the shadow. This is insane, Omar stammered. This is some jinn nonsense. I'm not signing anything. The shadow laughed, the sound scraping their eardrums. Refuse and you end like him. It gestured to Zane, whose body twitched, his lifeless eyes snapping open. The team screamed, backing away as Zane's corpse sat up, his head lolling at an unnatural angle. His mouth moved, but the voice wasn't his. It was the shadow's. Sign or suffer. Sana clutched Aisha's arm. Aisha, we can't. Ye Shaitani high, we need to destroy it. How? Bilal asked, his voice rising. We're locked in with that thing. Aisha's mind raced. The contract felt like the key, but signing it was out of the question. She scanned the room, her eyes landing on a fire extinguisher mounted on the wall. If we can't sign it, we burn it. Are you crazy? Omar yelled. You think that thing's gonna let us? The shadow moved closer, its form stretching to fill the room. The air grew heavier, and Aisha's vision blurred, as if the shadow was pressing into her thoughts. Images flashed in her mind, her failing the client presentation, her career crumbling, her family's disappointment. You want success. The shadow whispered, sign and it's yours. Resist it. Sana said suddenly, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. It's feeding on our fear. I noticed. When we argue, when we panic, it gets stronger. Aisha, don't listen to it. Aisha nodded, shaking off the visions. Sana's right. It's trying to break us. Bilal grabbed the extinguisher. Omar, help me with the desk. Omar hesitated, his eyes darting to Zane's twitching corpse. Ye no hi ho sakta. I can't do it. Aisha snapped, her team lead authority cutting through his panic. She dragged the desk toward the center of the room, creating a barrier between them and the shadow. Bilal yanked the extinguisher from the wall, his hands shaking but determined. The shadow roared, the sound shaking the room. Symbols on the walls glowed brighter, and Zane's corpse stood, lurching toward them. You cannot escape, it said, its voice a grotesque parody of Zane's. Sana grabbed a cable from the floor, wrapping it around her hand like a weapon. Stay back, she shouted, swinging it at the corpse. It staggered but kept coming, its movements jerky, like a puppet on strings. Bilal sprayed the extinguisher, the foam hitting the corpse and the shadow. The shadow recoiled, its form flickering, as if the foam disrupted its presence. It's working, he yelled. Aisha, the contract. Aisha held the file, her hands trembling as she tore the page from its binding. The paper felt alive, squirming under her fingers. She threw it to the floor and grabbed a lighter from her purse, a habit from her college days when she smoked to cope with stress. Everyone back. She flicked the lighter, but the flame wouldn't catch. The shadow laughed, its voice now inside her head. You cannot destroy us. Wanna bet? Bilal growled, grabbing a bottle of hand sanitizer from the desk. He doused the contract, the liquid soaking the paper. Aisha tried the lighter again, and this time a small flame sparked. The shadow screamed, a sound that rattled their skulls. Zane's corpse lunged, knocking Aisha to the ground. The lighter skidded across the floor, and the shadow loomed over her, its void, face inches from hers. Sign, it hissed. Sana swung the cable, striking the corpse's head. It collapsed, giving Aisha a chance to scramble for the lighter. She grabbed it, flicked it on, and touched the flame to the contract. The paper ignited instantly, burning with an unnatural green flame. The shadow shrieked, its form dissolving into tendrils of smoke that retreated into the walls. The room fell silent, the symbols faded, and Zane's body slumped, lifeless once more. The door clicked, unlocking itself. Did we do it? Omar whispered, his voice hoarse. Aisha stared at the ashes of the contract, her heart pounding. I don't know, but we're not staying to find out. They stumbled out of the server room, the office beyond eerily quiet. The fluorescent lights buzzed, but the shadows seemed normal again. Aisha's phone buzzed, a new text, "You cannot run." Sona grabbed her arm. Aisha, ye kotam no hai hua. It's still here. Bilal nodded, his face grim. We burned the contract, but this place, Zenith Solutions, it's not what we thought. Aisha looked at her team, their faces pale and drawn. We need to find out what this company really is, and we need to do it before it comes back. As they moved toward the elevators, the lights flickered again. In the distance, from the darkened hallway, a low laugh echoed. The shadow wasn't gone, it was waiting. The server room door clicked open, releasing Aisha, Bilal, Sana, and Omar into the hallway of Zenith Solutions. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting stark shadows that seemed to flicker at the edges of their vision. The air was heavy, thick with the metallic tang of Zane's blood still lingering in their senses, though they'd left his body behind. The burned remains of the blood, written contract smoldered in Aisha's memory, but the shadow's final words, "You cannot run," echoed louder. Aisha led the group toward the elevators, her heart pounding. We're getting out of here, she said, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. No stopping, no looking back. Bilal, clutching the fire extinguisher like a weapon, glanced over his shoulder. You think that thing's gone after we torched its creepy contract? Sana shook her head, her headphones dangling around her neck, still crackling with faint static. Ye kotam no hai hua, Bilal, it's still here, I can feel it. Omar, trailing behind, was a mess, wet, soaked, eyes darting. Zane's dead and we're next. Ye shaitani hai, Aisha, we should have never come to this office. Shut up, Omar. Aisha snapped, her patience fraying. Panicking won't help. We need to stay together and she stopped. The hallway stretched endlessly before them, cubicles and glass partitions repeating in a way that defied the office's layout. The elevators, which should have been 10 steps away, were gone. Instead, the corridor twisted into a maze of identical workstations, each with a flickering monitor displaying the same red message, "You're next." What the? Bilal whispered, gripping the extinguisher tighter. This isn't right. The office isn't this big. Sana's eyes widened, scanning the endless cubicles. It's like the building changed, like it's alive. Aisha's phone buzzed. Another text from an unknown number. Finish the project. Be free. She showed it to the others, her stomach churning. The client presentation, it's talking about that. Omar laughed a high-pitched, hysterical sound. You're kidding, right? Zane's dead, there's a demon in the walls, and you want us to finish a PowerPoint. It's not just a PowerPoint, Sana said, her voice low. If that thing wants us to finish it, there's something wrong with it, like the contract. Bilal nodded, his face grim. Ye office koi normal jaga no hai, Zenith Solutions. It's a trap. Aisha took a deep breath, her team lead instincts kicking in. Okay, we find a computer, check the project files, and figure out what's going on. Then we get to the elevators, wherever they are. They moved cautiously, the office unnaturally quiet except for the hum of lights and the occasional creak, like the building was breathing. The cubicles seemed to shift as they passed, desks rearranging, chairs inching closer. Aisha's laptop, left on her desk, was now in the middle of the hallway, its screen glowing. She approached it warily, the others crowding behind her. The presentation file was open, but the slides were wrong. Instead of charts and marketing jargon, Each slide showed distorted images of the team, moments from their past, failures they'd buried. One slide showed Aisha at her first job, fired for missing a deadline, her boss's voice echoing in her mind, "You're not cut out for this." Another showed Bilal's art school rejection letter, the words lacking originality, burned into the screen. Bilal flinched, stepping back. "Yay, Kaya High, how does it know that?" Sana's slide was next, a memory of a toxic internship where her code was stolen, her confidence shattered. She stared, her face pale. This was years ago. I never told anyone. Omar's slide showed him failing his university exams, his parents' disappointment etched in their faces. He turned away, muttering, "Bas, band Karo ye sab." Aisha slammed the laptop shut, but the screen flickered back on, now displaying a single slide. "Finish the project, or live your failures forever." The words pulsed, and the shadows in the hallway grew darker, stretching toward them like claws. "It's messing with our heads," Aisha said, her voice shaking but resolute. "It wants us to give in. We need to find the project's source file, see what's really in it." Sana nodded, her coder's mind taking over. "The main server. If the project's corrupted, it's stored there. But we need to get back to the server room. Back there," Omar said, his voice rising with Zane's body. "No way. We don't have a choice." Bilal snapped, his sarcasm replaced by urgency. "Unless you want to stay in this funhouse forever." They retraced their steps, but the office had become a labyrinth. Hallways looped back on themselves, doors led to nowhere, and the air grew colder, heavier. Aisha's phone buzzed again. "Work faster." She ignored it, focusing on the flickering lights ahead. As they turned a corner, they found a break room that hadn't been there before. The vending machine hummed, its lights casting an eerie glow. On the table was a single file folder, labeled Zenith Solutions, Employee Records. Aisha opened it, her hands trembling. Inside was a log, handwritten, detailing a former employee named Farouk, who'd vanished in 2018 after defying the service. "Service," Sana whispered, reading over her shoulder. "That's what the shadow called itself." Bilal scanned the log. Farouk was working late, just like us. He found something, a code in the company's system. He tried to delete it, and then, gone. Aisha's eyes narrowed. The project file, it's not just a presentation. It's part of whatever this thing is. A low laugh echoed through the break room, and the vending machine rattled, spilling cans onto the floor. The shadows on the walls moved, forming a humanoid shape that mimicked Aisha's posture. "You're learning?" It hissed, its voice a distorted echo of her own. "Finish the work and leave." Omar backed away, tripping over a chair. Nahai, I'm not doing this, let me out." The shadow lunged, its form wrapping around Omar like smoke. He screamed, clawing at his face as visions of his failures flooded his mind. Exams, rejections, his father's voice calling him useless. Aisha grabbed his shoulders, shaking him. "Omar, fight it. It's not real." Sana and Bilal pulled him back, the shadow retreating but not vanishing. Omar collapsed, sobbing. "It's too much. I can't. We're stronger than this," Aisha said, her voice fierce. "It feeds on our fear. We keep going." They found the server room again, but it was different. Larger, the walls pulsing with the same black tendrils from Zane's blood. Sana plugged into a terminal, her fingers flying over the keyboard. The project file loaded, but the code was gibberish, interspersed with the same symbols they'd seen on the walls. "This isn't CSS or JavaScript," she said, her voice trembling. It's like a ritual. It's summoning something." Bilal peered at the screen, his artist's eye catching details. "Those symbols, they are the same as the contract. This project is a trap." Aisha's phone buzzed. "Completed, now." The shadow reappeared, towering over them, its void, face splitting into a grin. The monitors flickered, showing Zane's face, his eyes black, his voice chanting, "Work, work, work." Omar scrambled to his feet, his panic exploding. I'm done, he shouted, grabbing a server cable and yanking it free. Sparks flew, and the room shook, the shadow roaring in fury. The floor cracked, revealing a void beneath, and Aisha grabbed Omar before he fell. "What are you doing?" she yelled. "I'm ending this." Omar screamed, pulling another cable. The shadow lunged, but Sana typed frantically, isolating the project file. The monitors went dark, and the shadow's roar faded to a whisper. "It's weaker," Sana said, panting. "The code. It's tied to the entity. If we can delete it." The shadow reformed, smaller but still menacing. "You cannot stop us." It hissed. "The service is eternal." Aisha's eyes met Sana's. "Then we rewrite it." As they worked, the office shuddered, the labyrinth tightening around them. Aisha's phone buzzed one last time. "You're running out of time." The shadow laughed, and the hallway beyond the server room stretched into darkness, waiting to swallow them whole. The server room trembled, the floor still cracked from Omar's reckless cable, pulling, a faint glow pulsing from the void beneath. Aisha, Bilal, Sana, and Omar stood huddled around the terminal, the air thick with the acrid smell of burnt circuits and the lingering metallic tang of Zane's blood. The shadow entity's laughter had faded to a low hum, but its presence lingered, a weight pressing on their minds. Sana's fingers hovered over the keyboard, her eyes fixed on the corrupted project file. A mess of code interwoven with the same jagged symbols that had crawled up the walls in part 1. "We can rewrite it," Sana said, her voice hoarse but determined. "If this code is summoning that thing, we can break the ritual. I just need time." "Time," Omar snapped, his face slick with sweat. "We're in a haunted maze, Sana. That thing's gonna kill us before you debug anything." "Bass, Omar." Aisha barked, her team lead authority strained but intact. "We're not giving up. Sana, do what you can. Bilal, watch the door. Omar, help me check the server logs for anything about Farouk." Omar muttered something under his breath, his eyes darting to the cracked floor where the void seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. The office beyond the server room was still a labyrinth, its endless corridors and shifting cubicles defying logic. The fluorescent lights flickered, casting shadows that moved independently, whispering in voices too faint to understand. Bilal gripped the fire extinguisher, his knuckles white. "Ye office koi normal jaga no hi. It's like we're in its stomach." Aisha ignored him, flipping through the server logs they'd found in the break room. The handwritten note about Farouk, the employee who vanished in 2018, haunted her, defied the service, deleted the code, disappeared. She scanned the digital logs, her eyes catching a recurring entry. Project Zenith access denied. User, Farouk, status terminated. Terminated, she whispered. They didn't just fire him, they erased him. Sana glanced up from the terminal, her face pale. "This code, it's not just a program, it's alive, Aisha. Every time I try to delete it, it rewrites itself, like it's fighting me." Before Aisha could respond, her phone buzzed. Another text from an unknown number. "One of you already serves." Her heart sank as she showed it to the others. "What does that mean?" Bilal asked, his voice low. "One of us." "What?" Omar backed away, his eyes wild. "Nahai, ye koi set up high. You're all looking at me like I'm the problem. I didn't do anything. No one's accusing you," Aisha said, but her tone lacked conviction. Omar's erratic behavior, yanking cables, panicking at every turn, was unraveling the group. She exchanged a glance with Bilal, who nodded slightly, his grip tightening on the extinguisher. Sana's fingers froze on the keyboard. "Wait, the code. It's accessing user permissions. Someone's logged in remotely. Right now." "Who?" Aisha asked, leaning over her shoulder. Sana's eyes widened. "It's Zane." The room fell silent, the name hanging like a curse. Zane, whose throat was slashed in part 1, whose blood had crawled up the walls. "That's impossible," Bilal said, his voice barely audible. "We saw him. He's dead." The monitors flickered, and Zane's face appeared on every screen, his eyes black voids, his smile unnatural. You thought you could burn the contract. His voice rasped, distorted, and layered with the shadow's whispers. You thought you could escape the service. Omar screamed, stumbling backward. He's alive. Ye Kaya Shaitani High. Aisha's mind raced. It's not Zane. It's the shadow. It's using his face to... A loud thunk interrupted her. The server room door swung open, revealing the hallway. And Zane standing there, his throat unmarred, his clothes pristine. He grinned, but his eyes were wrong, too dark, too empty. Miss me, he said, his voice a mix of his own and the shadow's. Sana gasped, her hands trembling as she backed away from the terminal. Zane, how? You faked it, Billal said, stepping forward, extinguisher raised. You weren't dead. You set us up. Zane's grin widened, and the shadows behind him writhed, forming clawed shapes that clung to the walls. The service needed a sacrifice, a test. You passed. For now. Aisha's stomach churned. You're working for that thing. Why? Zane tilted his head, his movements jerky, like a puppet. Zenith Solutions isn't a company. It's a deal. Success, power, wealth, all for a price. I paid it. Now it's your turn. Omar lunged, his fear turning to rage. Tumni Humin Dokadia. He swung a fist, but Zane moved impossibly fast, grabbing Omar's wrist and twisting it until he cried out, "Stop!" Aisha shouted, stepping between them. Zane, if you're with it, why are we still alive? What does it want? Zane's eyes flickered, a hint of his old self breaking through. The project, finish it, and the service lets you go. Refuse and... He gestured to the cracked floor, where the void pulsed, whispering their names. Sana shook her head, tears streaming down her face. He's lying, Aisha. The code, it's a summoning ritual. Finishing it will bring that thing fully into our world. Billal's voice was cold. Then we end this now. He sprayed the extinguisher at Zane, the foam hitting him square in the chest. Zane staggered, but the shadows caught him, wrapping around his body like armor. The room shook, monitors sparking as the shadow's laughter filled the air. Zane lunged at Billal, knocking the extinguisher away. The two grappled, crashing into a server rack. Sparks flew, and the void in the floor widened, a cold wind rising from it. Aisha grabbed a cable, wrapping it around Zane's legs, pulling him down. Sana, keep working. Shut down the code. Sana's hands flew over the keyboard, but she screamed, yanking them back. Her fingers were red, blistered, as if burned. It's fighting me, the keyboard, it's hot. Omar, clutching his wrist, shouted, "We're all gonna die because of you, Zane. Tumni ye sabkia." Zane laughed, his voice blending with the shadows. You're already part of it. Your ambition, your late nights, your dreams of success. You've been feeding the service since you signed your contracts. Aisha froze, remembering her first day at Zenith, the stack of paperwork, the nondescript forms, the employee contract. She whispered. It wasn't just a job. The shadow loomed larger, its form spilling from Zane's body, filling the room. The monitors displayed the project file, the symbols pulsing faster, forming a circle that matched the void in the floor. Finish it, the shadow hissed, its voice echoing in their skulls. Sana, ignoring the pain in her hands, typed frantically, "I'm isolating the code, if I can delete the core sequence." Her voice trailed off as the keyboard sparked, smoke rising from her fingertips. She screamed but kept typing, blood mixing with the keys. Billal wrestled Zane to the ground, pinning him. Aisha helped Sana. "I've got him." But Zane's strength was unnatural. He threw Billal off, sending him crashing into a wall. The extinguisher rolled away, and the shadow surged, wrapping around Billal's legs, dragging him toward the void. "No!" Aisha shouted, diving for Billal. She grabbed his arm, pulling with all her strength. Omar joined her, his earlier panic replaced by desperation. Together, they yanked Billal back, but the shadow's grip tightened, its claws digging into his skin. Sana's voice cut through the chaos. "I've got it. The code's core, it's tied to the server's root directory." She hit a key, and the monitors went dark, the symbols fading. The shadow roared, its form flickering, but it didn't vanish. Zane stood, his eyes glowing black. You can't stop the service. It's in the walls, the code, your minds. Aisha's phone buzzed. One betrays, all suffer. She looked at Zain, then at Omar, whose eyes darted away. Doubt gnawed at her. Was Zain the only traitor? The void in the floor pulsed, and the shadow's laughter returned, louder, deeper. The server room door slammed shut, locking them in again. Zain stepped forward, his grin splitting wider than humanly possible. Finish the project, he said, or I'll finish you. Sana collapsed, her hands charred, blood dripping onto the floor, the voidit growing larger. Aisha gripped Bilal's arm, her mind racing. They were running out of time, and the shadow was stronger than ever. The server room was a battlefield of shattered monitors and sparking cables, the void in the floor pulsing like a living wound. Aisha, Bilal, Sana, and Omar stood cornered, the shadow entity looming over them, its form now a towering mass of writhing darkness. Zain, revealed as a traitor in Part 4, stood before it, his eyes glowing black, his grin unnatural. Sana slumped against the terminal, her hands charred and bleeding from her battle with the cursed code, her breaths shallow. The air was thick with the stench of burnt plastic and something older, fouler, like decay from another world. Aisha's phone buzzed, the screen cracked but still glowing with a final text, finish or fall. The shadow's laughter echoed, shaking the walls as the void expanded, its edges lapping at their feet. The monitors, though shattered, flickered with the same red message, "You're next. We're not finishing anything," Aisha said, her voice trembling but defiant. She gripped Bilal's arm, pulling him away from the void. "Sana, can you still delete the code?" Sana shook her head, her face pale, her voice barely a whisper. "It's too strong, the code. It's part of the building now. It's in everything." Omar, clutching his injured wrist from Zain's attack, was unraveling. "Ye kotam nohai hoga. We're done for. Zain, you bastard. Why'd you do this?" Zain's laugh was a grotesque mix of his own voice and the shadows. "The service gives you what you want. Success, power. I chose to live. You can too, if you sign." Bilal spat on the floor, his artist's defiance burning through his fear. "Tumni apni rubechti, Zain. We're not like you." The shadow surged, its claws slashing through the air, narrowly missing Bilal. "You all signed?" It hissed, its voice a chorus of screams. "Your contracts, your ambition, you fed us." Aisha's heart sank, remembering the employee contracts from Part 4, buried in fine print. Zenith Solutions wasn't a company. It was a trap, a deal with something ancient and hungry. She glanced at the void, its whispers growing louder, chanting their names. "We need to find the source," she said. "The code, the contract, it's all connected. There has to be a center." Sana's eyes flickered with a spark of hope. "The CEO office," Farouk's log mentioned it. "He found something there before he vanished." "The CEO?" Bilal said, dodging another swipe from the shadow. "That guy's never here. His office is locked tighter than a vault." "Then we break in," Aisha said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Omar, help Sana. Bilal, with me. We're ending this." Omar hesitated, his eyes darting to Zain, who stood unnaturally still, watching them. "You don't get it," Omar whispered. "It's in my head. It's showing me. Everything I've failed at. Fight it." Aisha snapped, grabbing his shoulder. "We're stronger than it thinks." They moved, dragging Sana toward the hallway. The office labyrinth from Part 3 had tightened, the corridors narrowing, walls pulsing with black tendrils. The fluorescent lights flickered, casting shadows that mimicked their movements, then twisted into clawed shapes. Zain followed, his footsteps silent, his grin fixed. The CEO office was at the end of the hall, its glass door etched with the Zenith Solutions logo, a crescent moon that now looked like a sickle. The lock was heavy, electronic, but Sana, despite her burned hands, pulled a USB drive from her pocket. "I can hack it," she said, wincing as she plugged it into the keypad. "Hurry." Bilal urged, glancing back. Zane was closer, the shadow coiling around him like a second skin. The void's whispers grew louder, forming words: sign, serve, stay. The keypad beeped, and the door clicked open. They stumbled inside, slamming it shut behind them. The CEO office was pristine. Mahogany desk, leather chair, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Karachi's skyline. But the air was wrong, heavy, like breathing through wet cloth. In the center of the floor, hidden beneath a rug, was a ritual circle carved into the marble, its symbols matching the blood tendrils and cursed code. Aisha knelt, tracing the carvings. This is it, the source. Farouk must have found this. Sana, leaning against the desk, nodded weakly. The code, it's linked to this. If we destroy the circle, we might stop it. Bilal's eyes widened. Might, Sana, your hands are half cooked, and we're betting on might. Before she could answer, the door rattled. Zane's voice, now fully the shadows, boomed through the glass. You cannot break the service. It owns this place. It owns you. Omar's face twisted, his eyes glazing over. He's right, he whispered, stepping back. It's too strong. I can't keep fighting it. Aisha grabbed his arm. Omar, no, stay with us. But Omar's body jerked, his movements unnatural, like a marionette. His eyes turned black, and his voice deepened, echoing the shadows. You're too late, he said, lunging at Aisha. Bilal tackled him, pinning him to the floor. Omar, snap out of it. But Omar's strength was inhuman, his nails clawing at Bilal's face, drawing blood. Sana, struggling to stand, grabbed a letter opener from the desk. Aisha, the circle, break it. Aisha scrambled to the ritual circle, her hands shaking as she searched for something to destroy it. The carvings pulsed, the void's whispers now a deafening roar. Her phone buzzed, the screen flashing. Sacrifice one, save the rest. Her heart stopped. She looked at Omar, thrashing under Bilal, his possessed body snarling. Then at Sana, barely conscious, her hands ruined. Bilal, bleeding but fighting. The shadow wanted a sacrifice. But who? Zane burst through the door, the shadow spilling from him like ink. Choose, he said, his voice splitting into a dozen tones. One life or all. Aisha's mind raced. She remembered her dreams, leading a team, building a career, proving herself. Zenith had promised that, but it was a lie. The shadow fed on ambition, twisting it into despair. She grabbed the letter opener from Sana, her decision made. No one else, she said, her voice steady. She drove the letter opener into the ritual circle, carving through the symbols. The marble cracked and the void screamed, a sound that shook her bones. The shadow roared, surging toward her. Bilal shouted, pulling Omar away as the possessed intern clawed at the air. Sana, with her last strength, typed a command into her USB drive, linked to the office's security system. The lights blazed, overloading the circuits, and the ritual circle sparked, its symbols burning away. Aisha's vision blurred, the shadow's claws tearing at her mind. She saw her failures, every missed deadline, every doubt. But she pushed through, carving deeper. This ends now, she whispered, her voice breaking. The circle shattered, and the void collapsed, sucking the shadow into it. Zane screamed, his body dissolving into smoke, his betrayal consumed by the entity he'd served. Omar collapsed, his eyes clearing, his possession broken. But Sana slumped, her body still, her breaths gone. Sana, Aisha shouted, dropping the letter opener and rushing to her. She shook her, but Sana's eyes stared blankly, her burned hands limp. The price of the code's deletion had been too high. The office shuddered, the labyrinth collapsing back into its normal shape. The fluorescent lights stabilized, and the air cleared, but the weight of loss lingered. Bilal helped Omar to his feet, both shaken, bloodied, but alive. We did it, Bilal said, his voice hollow. Didn't we? Aisha looked at Sana's body, her heart breaking. At what cost? They carried Sana out, leaving the CEO office behind. The elevators were there now, waiting. As they descended, Aisha's phone buzzed one last time, but the screen was blank. The shadow was gone, or so she hoped. Epilogue: weeks later, Aisha quit Zenith Solutions, unable to return to the place that had taken so much. Bill took a job at a small design firm, but he saw shadows in every corner, flinching at flickering lights. Omar dropped out of university, haunted by nightmares of his possession. Crescent Towers stood tall, its 7th floor leased to a new startup, its secrets buried in the marble. Aisha walked past the building one evening, the Karachi skyline glowing behind it. She paused, her breath catching. In the reflection of the glass, a shadow moved. Not hers, but something else, waiting. Her phone buzzed. No number, just one word: work.